I work offshore. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. That's been my life for the last 11 years. The platform sits about 60 miles out in the Gulf, and when you're out there, you're out there. No running to the store, no quick drive home, no dropping by the school play because you forgot it was Tuesday. You're on the rig or you're not. That's the deal. My daughter Lily, she was 8 when all of this happened. 8 years old, second grade, missing her 2 front teeth and obsessed with a hamster named Biscuit she'd saved up her allowance to buy. Her mother and I split when Lily was 4. It wasn't ugly, the divorce. We were 2 people who married too young and figured it out too late. We stayed civil for Lily's sake, and mostly it worked. My ex-wife, I'll call her Jennifer, she started seeing someone new about a year and a half before any of this. Guy named Troy. I didn't know much about him. He drove a nice truck, worked in logistics, kept his yard clean. Jennifer seemed happy. Lily didn't say much about him either way, which I told myself was fine. Kids adjust. They do. I had a bad feeling once. Just once. Before everything. I drove by to pick Lily up for my weekend, and Troy answered the door. He looked at me the way some men look at you. Not hostile exactly, but like he was measuring something, like he was deciding. I remember thinking, that's an odd way to look at your girlfriend's ex-husband at a pickup. But I let it go. I told myself I was being territorial. I drove away with Lily and didn't think about it again. I should have thought about it again. I was supposed to be on the rig until the 14th, standard rotation. I'd been out there 9 days when a valve assembly failed on the secondary line, and they had to pull half the crew for safety while the repair team came in by helicopter. My supervisor told me to take the time, come back when they called. So I did. I packed my bag, got on the transport boat, and headed back to shore a full 5 days early. I didn't call Jennifer to let her know. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I figured I'd get home, sleep in my own bed, maybe surprise Lily at school pickup on Wednesday. I wasn't thinking anything was wrong. I was just tired and glad to be off the water. I got to my apartment around 3 p.m., threw my bag down, showered, and sat on the couch doing nothing for about an hour. Then I thought, Lily gets out at 3:15. Jennifer's house is 12 minutes away. I could be there when the bus drops her off. She'd love that. I pulled up to the house at 3:40. The bus had already come and gone. I could tell because the neighbor's kid was still in the driveway on his bike, and he always waits for the bus before coming inside. I parked, walked up the front steps, knocked. Nothing. Ring the bell. Nothing. Ring the bell. Nothing. I tried calling Jennifer, straight to voicemail. I walked around to the side of the house and called out, Lily, Jen, anybody home? I heard something. I stopped walking. It was faint, thin, like it was coming through something solid. I stood still and listened. It was coming from the backyard. I pushed open the side gate and walked through. Jennifer had a decent-sized yard, a garden along the back fence, a storage shed on the right side that Troy had apparently built sometime in the spring. I'd seen it from the driveway but never paid attention to it. The shed door had a padlock on it, a heavy one, the kind you'd use on a job site. I said her name once, right at the door, not loud, just said it. And she said, Daddy, I don't know how to explain what happens to you in that moment. Your whole body just changes, like something cold gets poured into your chest, and you go very, very still. I said, Baby, it's me. I'm here. I pulled on the padlock. It didn't move. I said, Are you okay? Can you talk to me? She said, It's really dark in here. I went to the garage. The side door was unlocked. I knew the code from 2 years ago, and Jennifer had never changed it. I went straight for the tool wall. Bolt cutters, third hook from the left. I grabbed them and I ran back to the shed. The padlock took 2 cuts. I threw the door open. I have been in a lot of uncomfortable places in my life. I've worked in heat that makes the air shimmer, and in cold that gets into your joints and stays. But nothing prepared me for the inside of that shed. It was late September, still warm in the afternoons, and that metal box had been sitting in the sun all day. It was like opening an oven. The smell hit me first. It was stale and sharp and wrong in a way I can't fully describe. And then I saw her. Lily was in the corner, sitting on the concrete floor with her knees pulled to her chest. She was wearing the same clothes she'd had on when I dropped her off the previous Friday, a pink shirt with a cartoon cat on it, and her gray leggings. Her hair was matted. Her lips were cracked. She squinted when the light hit her because she'd been in the dark for so long. I went down on my knees and grabbed her, and she just melted into me, like she didn't have anything left. I said, "How long?" I said it into her hair because I couldn't look at her face yet without losing it. "How long have you been in here?" She said, "Since Saturday morning." It was Tuesday. I picked her up and carried her out into the yard, and she kept blinking at the light. I got her to the driveway, sat her on the hood of my car, got a water bottle from the back seat. She drank it so fast I had to take it away and tell her to slow down. She looked at me like I'd taken something from her. I let her drink more. I called 911. My voice was steadier than I expected. I told them I'd found my 8-year-old daughter locked in a shed at this address. She'd been inside since Saturday morning. She appeared to be dehydrated and disoriented, and I needed police and an ambulance now. The woman on the line said they were sending both. She asked me to stay on with her. I did. Lily held on to my arm the whole time I was on the phone. She didn't say much. She just held on. The ambulance arrived in 6 minutes. I remember watching the paramedics work, checking her eyes, her pulse, getting an IV started, talking to her in calm, careful voices. One of them looked at me over her head, and I could see it in his face. What he was thinking. What this looked like to someone who knew what they were seeing. I told the police officers everything I knew. I told them about Troy. I told them Jennifer wasn't answering her phone. One officer nodded and wrote things down, and another went to knock on the neighbor's door. A third called in the plates on Troy's truck, which was parked in the garage. Jennifer pulled up 22 minutes after the ambulance. She got out of her car already defensive. I could tell by the way she looked at the vehicles, the way her shoulders came up. She saw me standing by Lily's gurney, and she opened her mouth, and I said, "Don't." Just that. She stopped. I asked her where she'd been. She said she'd gone to her sister's for a couple of days. I asked her if she knew Lily was in the shed, and she didn't say no. She stood there, and she didn't say no. She said Troy had put Lily in there Friday night because Lily was acting up and crying, and Jennifer had agreed to leave her there until she calmed down. She said she thought it would only be a few hours. She said she didn't know it would go this long. I looked at my daughter lying on that gurney with an IV in her arm, cracked lips, matted hair, and I thought about how she'd sounded saying, "It's really dark in here." I looked back at Jennifer, and I had nothing to say to her. I genuinely had nothing. There was no sentence in me for what she'd just told me. The pediatric ER doctor who evaluated Lily didn't try to hide his reaction. He took one look at her vitals and then looked at me and said he needed to talk to me privately in the hallway. I stepped out. He said she was significantly dehydrated. She had abrasions on her hands and knees from the concrete, and he was concerned about her mental state in the immediate aftermath and wanted a child psychologist in within the hour. He said if she'd been in there another 12 hours in that heat, we might have been having a different conversation. He said those exact words. A different conversation. I went back into the room and sat next to Lily and held her hand, and she said, "Daddy, Biscuit's gone." I said, "What do you mean, gone?" She said Troy had taken Biscuit's cage and put it outside with the lid open the night he locked her in. She said she'd found it the next morning when there was a little light coming under the door. The cage was empty. I don't know exactly what Troy did with that hamster. I've thought about it more times than I want to admit. Lily cried about Biscuit longer than she cried about the shed, which tells you something about the specific cruelty of what he did. He knew she loved that animal. He knew. Troy was arrested that evening at a friend's house in Galveston. He didn't resist. Apparently, he told the arresting officer he'd been within his rights as a parental figure to discipline a child in his home. He said it like it was a reasonable position. Jennifer was taken in for questioning that night. She was charged later with child endangerment, knowing about the situation and leaving the state. Her attorney argued she hadn't known the full extent, that she'd believed Lily would be let out after a few hours. The prosecutor didn't buy it. I didn't either. The weeks that followed were, I don't have a clean word for them. Lily came home with me. We got an emergency custody order within 72 hours, and I took leave from the rig. I slept on the floor outside her room for the first 3 nights because she'd wake up screaming and not know where she was. I'd open her door and say, "I'm right here," and she'd find me in the dark, and the screaming would stop. We got her a therapist named Dr. Doc Owens, who specialized in childhood trauma. She was good. She was very good. Lily took to her in a way I hadn't expected. I thought an 8-year-old might resist, but she went in every Wednesday and came out looking a little lighter each time. I won't lie to you. There were nights I sat in my car in the driveway after Lily went to sleep and I felt things I'm not proud of. Rage that had nowhere to go. A specific kind of grief for the version of my daughter who didn't flinch when someone walked behind her unexpectedly. I grieve that. I still do, a little. Troy's trial took 4 months to begin. His attorney tried to minimize, argued it was an unconventional parenting method, not criminal abuse. The prosecutor walked the jury through the timeline hour by hour. The medical records. The photos of the interior of that shed. The testimony from the ER doctor about what another 12 hours would have meant. The jury took less than 3 hours to convict. Troy was sentenced to 9 years. He'll serve at least 6 before any parole consideration. The judge used the phrase deliberate, sustained, and contemptible in her remarks before sentencing. I wrote that down. I keep it on a note card in my wallet. I don't know why exactly. I just do. Jennifer pled guilty to the endangerment charge rather than go to trial. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, mandatory parenting classes, and supervised visitation only, meaning she cannot be alone with Lily without a third party present. Her attorney made a statement to the press about remorse and rehabilitation. I didn't read it. The custody modification became permanent 6 months later. Lily lives with me full-time. I adjusted my rotation schedule. I work a shorter cycle now, and my sister covers the weeks I'm offshore. It costs more and I'm home less often. But when I'm home, I'm all the way home. Lily turned 9 in January. She got a new hamster, her idea. She named him Captain. He has a 2-story cage with a running wheel and a little hammock, which I did not know hamsters needed, but apparently they do. She talks to him every morning before school. I stand in the hallway sometimes and listen to her, and I think about how she used to sound talking to Biscuit, and I think about that shed, and I think about Dr. Owens saying children are more resilient than we give them credit for, but they need the right conditions to show it, the right conditions. I think about that a lot. There was a moment in the hospital the night I found her. I'm not sure I've told anyone this. We were waiting for the CT results, and it was late, and the ward was quiet, and Lily had finally fallen asleep holding my hand. I looked at her face, still dirty, hair still a mess, one of those hospital bracelets on her wrist, and I thought about the fact that I wasn't supposed to be home yet. That if the valve assembly hadn't failed, I'd still be 60 miles offshore. I wouldn't have gone to the house. The bus would have come and gone, and nobody would have been there. I don't know what to do with that. I'm not a man who talks much about fate, or God, or signs. I'm a man who fixes things and shows up on time and follows the safety protocol. Because the protocol exists for a reason, but I cannot explain that valve. I cannot explain why it failed on day 9 of a 14-day rotation. I've tried. I keep coming back to the same place, which is that sometimes things happen and the only thing you can do with them is be grateful. I am grateful. Every single day. Even the hard ones. Even the ones where Lily wakes up in the night and I hear her down the hall, moving around, checking that the windows are latched and the doors are locked. Even those days. She asked me once, about 2 months after everything, what was going to happen to Troy. I told her he was going to jail for a long time because what he did was wrong and illegal and judges take it seriously. She thought about it. Then she said, he was mean to Biscuit too. And I said yes, he was. She said, Captain, would never have to meet him, right? I said no, never. She nodded and went back to drawing. She was drawing Captain, actually. She's been drawing him in various poses since October, filling up notebooks with hamster portraits. I have a stack of them on my desk. I kept one, framed it. It hangs in the kitchen where I can see it every morning. Lily drew him wearing a tiny cape. Captain the hamster, wearing a cape. There's something in that, I think. Some kids, after what she went through, would shut down, would go quiet and stay quiet. Lily decided her hamster was a superhero. She decided she was going to draw it in a cape and frame it on the wall. I'm not the one who won here. She is. She's the one who sat on a concrete floor in the dark for 3 days and then came out and decided Captain needed a cape. I just showed up. That's all I did. I showed up 5 days early, and I was there when she needed me to be. I just showed up. I've thought a lot about what made any of this possible. Not the bad parts, I mean what made the good parts possible. What made Lily able to sit with a therapist on Wednesday afternoons and come out looking lighter. What made her decide, 2 months after everything, that her new hamster needed a cape. There's a version of me that would say it was luck. The valve failed. I came home early. I happened to be there. And yes, that's true, but I've spent enough time sitting with it now to know that luck only explains the timing. It doesn't explain the bolt cutters on the third hook. It doesn't explain the garage code I'd memorized 2 years before and never needed until that Tuesday afternoon. Those things were just readiness, showing up prepared even when you don't know what you're preparing for. Troy made a choice. He made it deliberately, with full knowledge of what he was doing. He put an 8-year-old girl in a metal box in the September heat and walked away. And Jennifer made a choice too. Quieter, softer, but just as real. She chose to leave. She told herself it would be a few hours. She got in the car anyway. Both of those choices had weight. They had consequences that didn't disappear just because neither of them intended for it to go that far. That's the thing about choices. They don't care about your intentions. They only care about what actually happened. And what actually happened was Lily, in the corner of that shed, knees to her chest. 3 days in the same pink shirt. But here's what I keep coming back to. Lily survived that shed not just because I came home early. She survived it because she held on. A little kid, alone in the dark, no water, no light, no certainty that anyone was coming. And she held on. I think about the kind of quiet courage that takes. The kind you can't teach and can't manufacture. It's just in some people. It was in her. That's not nothing. That's everything, actually. I think there's something honest in the idea that the people who hurt Lily, they didn't just hurt her. They revealed something about themselves that was already there. The cruelty Troy showed wasn't a moment of bad judgment. It was a pattern, visible in how he looked at me in the doorway that one afternoon 2 years before. I felt it, and I let it go. I won't do that again. I've learned to take seriously the things I notice and then talk myself out of. The quiet voice that says something's off here. That voice is not paranoia. That's your mind doing its job. Lily draws Captain in a cape now. She fills notebooks with it. I look at those drawings, and I think about what it means that her instinct, after everything, was to make something. To put a pencil to paper and give her hamster a superpower. That's not a small thing. That's a kid deciding, without anyone telling her to, that the story isn't over and the next chapter gets to be different. I didn't teach her that. She already knew it. My job, the only job that ever really mattered, was just to be there when she needed me to be. I was, and I will be, every single time.